Well, I always made the joke that Joe Biden is sitting at a Fisher-Price fake Oval Office, and that meme came true today.
President Biden.
Tell me he's a puppet without telling me he's a puppet, as of course that visual representation was memeified a little bit, but the real video footage is just as horrible, as it looks like the President of the United States was put on a tiny desk as the establishment just broke out the fake White House set again for him after he just returned from his 2-week beach nap, as his major chief political rival now looks like is having a larger awakening after doing a very big podcast with Lex Friedman that had a lot of major bombshells within it that pointed some direct criticism at a lot of the puppeteers, at a lot of the central controllers out there, and made some major declarative statements that have shifted the political landscape. This, as of course we still have to remember, it was just a few weeks ago where there was a major attempt on the life of the former president of the United States. There are major developments now from congressional investigations into it that highlight more severe questions about the government's direct involvement in it. All the while, they still keep Joe Biden in his tiny desk, but also outside from the rest of the world. This, as Joe Biden also previously declared that he's only allowed to be at his tiny desk and no longer allowed to be in crowds. Maybe that's just what the DNC and Kamala tells him, but here's the clip.
Trail today.
Feels good.
Good. How do you feel about Pennsylvania?
Except I'm not able to go out in the crowds anymore. They don't, Secret Service doesn't let me.
No, why not?
Well, because they say it's too dangerous. No one gets to go out. Remember not? You know,
How do you feel about Pennsylvania right now?
I feel real good about Pennsylvania. I think we're going to win Pennsylvania.
I would not be surprised if that guy's using robotics to walk around. Anyway, that statement is pretty big, as it highlights the severity of the current situation that a lot of politicians are under, as of course politically things have gone a little hyperbolic here in the United States. Some people have taken it a little bit overboard when it comes to, of course, politicking, and as these comments from the current president of the United States are very eye-opening, as of course he's not allowed to walk into crowds. The Secret Service doesn't let him, quote, because it's too dangerous. And obviously the temperature in the room was turned up as Donald Trump also declared that he now believes in God more after the attempted taking of his life. Something that, of course, would have larger transformative effects on anyone who, of course, came this close within losing their existence. That's something that, of course, not only will be playing up on the nervous system, the mental health, as it's clear this is going to have larger psychological effects on what could be the next president of the United States, as this is an issue that I think is absolutely worth talking about, as it looks like Donald Trump is still processing everything that kind of happened to him, as he is now raising some more new questions about those particular events, who's responsible here, and why still we don't have any direct answers to what's going on here. The official story is that the federal government can't get the data, can't get information from a cell phone, which we all know probably is a larger misnomer and lie by them, since they operate and run an entire track, trace, and database society that spies on every little thing that every American does. This, as today we even have more details surrounding this entire incident that are absolutely huge here, as a new congressional report now reveals the person and individuals that actually stopped this lunatic, this madman, from taking shots at the former president of the United States, as this new report now claims that the shooter was, quote, incapacitated by local police officers, not Secret Service, who after a longer period of time now than previously expected it to be, were the ones that did, quote, decisively take his life. This, as U.S. Congressman Clay Higgins just offered up a different narrative to the official story of what's going on here, countering claims from, of course, the Federal Bureau of Investigations that, by the way, also has been very slow when it comes to disclosures, when it comes to providing information to investigators, while also redacting heavy amounts of information from them. And if you didn't need to be more suspicious, the report by Congressman Higgins is now claiming that the shooter was actually stopped first originally by local law enforcement that were able to successfully disarm him by shooting out his rifle, fragging his face, which affected his neck and right shoulder, breaking up the stock of his rifle, which prevented Crooks from being able to take more shots here. As of course, Crooks took, according to the official records here, 8 shots at the former president of the United States. And it looks like he would have been taking a lot more if it wasn't for the actions of local law enforcement that stepped in here. And now only after local law enforcement disarmed him and stopped him from being able to take shots, only then we are finding out right now that Secret Service decided to step in and then take the decisive shots directly at his head that totally incapacitated him, which automatically makes me personally wonder here that there's a perspective here. There's an option here that makes you think that they could have done it in order to prevent him from being able to, of course, speak or testify. As there is a possibility here that they didn't expect local law enforcement to actually do anything here. But because they did, because they saw he was incapacitated, because he couldn't carry out his mission, his actions, then and only then, Secret Service acted in a way that, of course, would have prevented him from being able to provide any kind of evidence or information to the general public about what actually really happened here. And that's a perspective that I'm entertaining here, predominantly because of the overwhelming amount of coincidences here that are not adding up and do not make any sense. As it's also important to note here that the shooter's body was mysteriously cremated with the full approval of the FBI just 10 days after this entire incident. This, as personally myself, I am left with more questions than answers here, especially after this latest revelation here. This, as it definitely looks like this was a larger obfuscation effort that they are still participating in, that they're still hiding the true reasons for why it actually happened, as we still don't have a motive here. We still don't have the details of how this kid was able to get away with this. This anti-social loner that was the perfect candidate for someone that the federal authorities could have entrapped here, which they have a record of doing, especially when it comes to loners and people with mental health issues. And somehow you're telling me that this young man that was spotted acting suspiciously near the event beforehand, that was able to make it to the roof of the building where police officers and Secret Service agents were staging, with witnesses saying and screaming that he was up there, with sniper teams all around looking at the total vicinity of everything that's happening here, he was still able to pull out his rifle. He was able to fly a drone around the venue beforehand. He was able to walk in with the rangefinder. He was able to skirt local law enforcement and Secret Service that were telling everyone to keep an eye on him for the remainder of the event. You're telling me that this autistic, jack-born, secret spy-like individual just came out of nowhere? Yeah, right. As, of course, Donald Trump was kept on stage for a very long time as a man who was on a specific, perfect angle looking above him. As the only explanation here is that a roof was sloped, and therefore it magically outwitted the national security state and apparatus. Yeah, no. I don't buy that. And it definitely does look like Donald Trump is thinking along those same lines. As, of course, his latest comments that he previously made on a major radio talk show highlights how he is now kind of insinuating that there's something bigger at play here. As these comments are pretty big. These comments are really major. As he said, quote, "You do have to wonder." While speaking to Monica Crowley on our podcast episode,
the 3-letter agencies are slow walking a lot of this evidence, a lot of the videos, etc. Does it look increasingly to you like this was a suspicious, maybe even inside job?
It's very suspicious, very suspicious. There's so many things going on here that you do have to wonder. You do have to wonder. I wasn't thinking this way 3 weeks ago, but the more you see it, the more you start to say there could be something else, and that's really dangerous for the country. This shouldn't be like the Kennedy where they're waiting for so many years. I'll be opening that up like on my first week.
This, as Donald Trump also kind of raised the questions of why wasn't this stopped? Why can't we get any information afterwards? Why are cell phones that, again, Apple and the companies that make them have backdoored them. Why can't we get information about what this guy was up to, who he was talking to? As, of course, there are reports of him having multiple encrypted accounts, talking to potentially multiple individuals that are still unknown here. Who are those individuals? Who else participated in this larger conspiracy against the former president of the United States? Well, that's a question that I think is absolutely worth asking myself. And I think Donald Trump agrees here, as a lot of people are trying to blame everything on the inadequate training of the Secret Service here. And sorry, I don't buy that. A lot of people are trying to say, oh, it's the DEI, Secret Service agents. And sorry, I don't buy that here, because these kind of apocalyptic, quote, mistakes are far too many to call mistakes. I mean, there's only a certain amount of circumstances and coincidences happen that you kind of start looking at them and saying, yeah, no, this doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. And you can't have this huge type of failure here, colossal, gigantic, enormous failure that when you kind of look at and examine here, point to something smelling fishy here, to say the least. And a lot of people do agree with that, as of course now we have a new whistleblower saying, yeah, these people aren't trained, yeah, they're not professional. Okay, that doesn't stop them from literally not securing the main vantage point. That doesn't stop them from following a person that they saw was suspicious. That doesn't stop them from keeping Trump on stage as shots were literally being taken at him. As there's a Columbia University professor that just did a very fascinating interview with Tucker Carlson that had this to say about the entire matter and situation, as he essentially references a kind of rogue government that no longer cares about what you think of them.
You know, this is we have no attention span. We have complete lying from the government. We have secrecy and confidentiality. So we never actually resolve any of these issues, because it's very hard to have a systematic, methodical discussion where one discusses and then where there's a response. The thing that gets me about Washington is they don't feel they have to respond to anything. And you watch the spokespeople, Matt Miller at the State Department or Kirby in the White House, they smirk right in your face to tell you, you are nothing. We can tell anything to you. Do you understand? I mean, that's my interpretation.
I agree.
Yep, and that's the kind of sentiment, that's the type of government that we're all currently living under, that Donald Trump is promising to be different. As of course, his interview with Lex Friedman had many particular bombshells in there that do highlight a totally different kind of approach towards governance and addressing some of the kind of larger conspiracies. But before getting into all of that and the latest kind of bombshell revelations from the Lex Friedman podcast episode, I specifically wanted to talk about our podcast that is supported by you through, of course, our products on wearechange.shop, like magnesium glycinate. As, of course, there's a lot of things that are keeping a lot of people up at night, stressing people out and wrecking their nervous system. And that's one of the reasons why I started to look into alternatives for myself to help deal with that. And one of the alternatives that I found was magnesium glycinate, a great product that I take personally myself with every last meal of the night that I have, which has helped me with a lot of different things, whether it's my athletic performance, whether it's my quality sleep and recovery, whether it's my nervous system. I really do truly appreciate magnesium glycinate. I think you will too, so that's why you should check out wearechange.shop. Pick yourself up a bottle. You save 10% by subscribing and, of course, getting it monthly, so you remember to take it. As, of course, we always remind people to take their blood test, talk to their medical professionals before taking any kind of supplement, and get on a personalized health journey. Since, of course, there's a war on your personal health and well-being. And that's why I started to take it seriously. I started to work out. I started to focus on making sure my sleep is the best that it could be. And magnesium glycinate has helped me progress significantly. It could probably help you do your own homework, do your own research, but check out wearechange.shop. Click the magnesium glycinate page, and you could actually click a video in the right top hand corner to learn about this particular substance, what it does, the effects it has on you, as I think it's fair to say that during this political cycle in 2024, a lot of people need as much magnesium glycinate as possible. Again, there's a lot of different magnesiums out there. This is my favorite, and I have seen significant increases in my REM and deep sleep with it. I calculate my sleep with, of course, a Garmin watch. I try to stay away from the other technocratic spying devices out there. This is one of the best ones that actually doesn't even upload your data. But regardless of that, sleep is key. You're not getting good sleep, you're screwing yourself over, as our country is being screwed over, as perfectly addressed by Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Bill Ackman, that have been screaming about everything that's been happening here. As Elon Musk just retweeted Bill Ackman that specifically described the long-form conversation that Lex Fridman had with Donald Trump, saying, quote, "Put aside any preconception you have about Donald Trump and watch this long-form interview by Lex Fridman, and you could learn much more about who someone is in this format compared with curated excerpts of a biased media." And I absolutely agree with that. This is Kamala Harris has been hiding from the press, not doing any podcast, not doing any long-form unscripted conversations, as Donald Trump is winning this campaign trail through this particular format that just on Twitter has already received 14.6 million impressions. That is not, of course, excluding the YouTube numbers and other social media platforms that this podcast was watched on, as this was truly a very kind of candid, very important kind of conversation that was absolutely incredible to watch, since the two got into a lot of very niche, narrow issues that you never see the corporate media talk about, as they specifically described the media landscape shift that happened, how social media platforms are dominating the big corporate media institutions. Trump talked about his personal aspirations. He, of course, heavily criticized Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, as obviously he would during this political season, describing each and one of her interviews, that's softball interviews, which they are. Respectively speaking of it, she does no real interviews. She doesn't have any real conversations. Everything is just kind of weird, awkward cackling and questions that are probably sent to her beforehand, that she has a script that she reads and responds to, not naturally and organically. And people could feel that. And that's going to be something that people are going to be using as a deciding factor to decide who they're going to be supporting on, of course, November 5th. This as also they got into some controversial issues regarding UFOs, doing disclosures, and, of course, the story of the decade surrounding a Mr. Epstein, which we are going to be talking about in a little bit. I particularly found Trump's comments on Joe Rogan very interesting, as Donald Trump says that he doesn't know about doing his podcast. He said maybe he'll do it. And overall, even though I have been, a little bit of critical of Lex Fridman, this was a pretty powerful interview. As particularly the excerpt specifically around Jeffrey Epstein was, I think, one of the biggest issues, as Donald Trump described how he was, quote, a good salesman, and he got close to a lot of very powerful individuals. This as Donald Trump also promised that he would have no problems releasing more files surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, specifically the client list that a lot of very prominent, powerful individuals are on, that they probably will be doing everything in their power in order to prevent being released to the general public. As Lex Fridman asked specifically Donald Trump why so many smart, powerful people allowed Epstein to get so close to them, with Trump responding, quote, he had some nice assets that he'd thrown around like islands. But a lot of big people went to that island, but fortunately, I was not one of them. Here's an excerpt of the conversation that was absolutely fascinating to watch.
But a lot of big people went to that island. But fortunately, I was not one of them.
It's just very strange for a lot of people that the list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Probably will be, by the way. Probably.
So if you're able to, you'll be...
Yeah, I'd certainly take a look at it. Now, Kennedy's interesting because it's so many years ago. You know, they do that for danger, too, because, you know, it endangers certain people, et cetera, et cetera. So Kennedy is very different from the Epstein thing. But, yeah, I'd be inclined to do the Epstein. I'd have no problem with it.
Yeah, and whether it's the Epstein stuff, the UFO stuff, the JFK stuff, this is all stuff that, of course, I've been screaming about for 20 plus years, a part of this independent media operation that you guys are a part of. And seeing someone actually start these conversations on the main stage during a key critical juncture in American history, I think it's more important than ever. And if you agree with that, share this broadcast with your friends and family members. As of course, these types of conversations, I think, are far more important than just the hogwash and usual political circus that we are typically surrounded with, except for this year. Of course, this year is a lot more exciting than any other years out there, as there are a lot of things that are going up against Donald Trump, as he soon will also be sentenced in just a few days from now in New York City. There's a lot of other underhanded things happening in the technocratic space. We're going to be talking about that, plus a lot more, later on today on a podcast episode here on this YouTube channel, 6 p.m. Eastern, with live guests in studio. We have incredible people, a part of this independent media operation, that are able to talk to us, be a part of this show. You guys are one of them. Sign up to lookunfiltered.com. You guys get the ability to call in and be a part of our members area. And because you do that, this is why I love you guys. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Stay tuned and subscribe for more here on youtube.com/wearechange.